Hello, and welcome to this video tutorial for Creo Parametric version 3. The content of this video is assemblies. Previously in tutorials, you've made single parts, but in this video, we'll be looking at joining multiple parts together to form one assembly. So currently in my working directory, I have 3 parts. This first part of a bit of plate with a hole and keyway cut out and a notch taken out of the side. I have the second part that will fit into that notch, and the third part of a shaft and keyway that will fit into the hole. So we can create a new assembly by clicking File, New, and we'll choose Assembly. I will name that, press OK, and the assembly window will now open. So we can now assemble our first part by clicking the Assemble button up the top here, choosing the location. So our part A, we'll open that, and that's now loaded into our workspace. Note that it is this pink-purple color, and there's this colored coordinate system we can use to drag, move, and rotate our part around. So within our assembly environment, this first part is essentially floating. It's not constrained to any coordinate system. So we have the coordinate system of our assembly in the center here, but this part has its own coordinate system. So this brings into play our design intent. So the initial location of where this part is built can affect the assembly later on down the track. So we can now lock this part into place. So the status here, it's not constrained. We have to make that fully constrained. Under our options, we can choose the scroll down arrow and we'll click default. Now default will snap the coordinate system of our part to the coordinate system of our assembly environment. So we'll click default. Our part is now fully constrained, which is good. The color has changed to this yellow-orangey color, and then we can press OK. It's happy with the placement. And in our workflow, our first part is now populated. We can now insert a second part by pressing Assemble again, choosing our second part, opening that, and this is loaded into the assembly environment. Once again, it's this purpley color and it's in free space, so it's not constrained at the moment. Now constraining this is a little bit more difficult in that we can't simply press the default button to align the coordinate systems. So we're going to approximately move it to where we need it to be assembled. We can then rotate that in space. We can now rotate our workpiece, and we can choose some more constraints. So under the Placement tab, we can have more control over our constraint type. So for example, we could offset something by a distance or an angle. We could make surfaces parallel or coincident, coplanar. We can also make things tangent to one another. So we'll choose coincident to start with. We'll select this face by right-clicking to choose the face we want to select. So we need to select another item, and we'll select this edge here. Now they have snapped to being coincident, but it's still not fully constrained yet. It's partially constrained under our status. We can then add a new constraint. We'll also make this coincident. We'll choose this face here and this back face. So we're almost there, but the two objects are passing through one another. So we'll add a third and final constraint, also coincident, and we'll make these two bottom surfaces line up, 1 and 2. We're now fully constrained, so we can tick OK, and we can assemble the third part. So we'll now assemble our third and final part by pressing Assemble, choosing our final item, opening it. Once again, it's just in free space. We'll grab the center handle that we can use to move our part. I will put it in a location that's close by. Under our placement options, we'll select coincident. We will choose the outer surface of this shaft, the inner surface of this hole. That is now aligned. So using our handles, we can move it closer or further away. We need to make the surfaces of our key and keyway coincident. So we'll add a new constraint. We'll click this edge of our key, rotate our object, click this edge of our keyway. That's now coincident. And for our final constraint, we will use a distant offset. So we can choose the end of our shaft, this face of our plate, and we can set an offset of say 50 mil. We can make that 30. And our object has turned orange. It's fully constrained. We can now press OK. So now that we're finished with this assembly, we can refit the view. Often it gets quite cluttered with datum axes and planes, so we can turn those off. And we can also observe our work tree, where the 3 parts are children of our assembly model. If we were to modify one of these parts retrospectively, for example, if we were to change the overall thickness or length of our plate, that would be reflected back in the assembly. So this is what we mean about our broader design intent within Creo. So as a recap, assemblies are a way of joining multiple independent parts within Creo. As you initially make your parts, you have to consider your design intent, your alignment, and your datum axes. You can then import those in a blank assembly and gradually add constraints